In this video, we're going to talk about exemptions, or try to answer the question of what property do you get to keep through bankruptcy and what property might be exposed to for the bankruptcy court to take and sell and use the money to pay your creditors. In each bankruptcy case, a trustee is appointed, and the trustee's responsibility, and he has the power to take from you any property you can't claim exempt that's not protected and sell that property and pay your creditors with those funds. In most cases in Iowa, all property owned by debtors are protected and exempt by the exemption statutes. Most people in Iowa claim Iowa exemptions. If you've lived in Iowa for 2 years or longer, that's what you will be allowed to do, claim Iowa exemptions. If you lived in another state 2 years ago, you may have to claim that other state's exemptions. That may or may not be a benefit or harmful to you, but it probably doesn't make a whole lot of difference. Iowa has fairly liberal and debtor-friendly exemption laws, and I can tell you a little bit about them now, starting with your homestead. A home value or equity in a homestead is 100% protected in Iowa law. So no matter what your home's worth or how much value you have in your home, it's probably 100% protected. I say probably because there's one major exception to that rule, and that is if you have any debts that you're trying to discharge and get rid of in your bankruptcy that existed before you bought your house or before it became your homestead, then that homestead value is not protected, and the trustee can sell your home and use the money to pay your creditors. So if you have any pre-existing debt that existed before you got into your home, your homestead may not be protected or exempt. In a lot of cases, the value of the home doesn't matter, because if you owe a mortgage that's about up to the value of the house, there isn't any equity in it, and it doesn't make any difference anyway. Also, there's some rules with regard to if you owned a previous home and put that money, and when you sold that home into your current home, then the look-back period for when you owned a homestead goes back to the previous home or the one before that. So there's some rules that apply. Generally speaking, your home is protected under Iowa exemption laws. Additionally, each debtor is allowed to exempt a vehicle up to $7,000 in value. That applies to one vehicle only, so that if you have, say, 7 vehicles worth $1,000 apiece, you can't claim all of them exempt. You can only claim one vehicle exempt up to $7,000 in value. That includes the equity value in the vehicle. So if you have a $14,000 vehicle and you owe $7,000 on it, that would be protected because you have $7,000 in value, and you can exempt $7,000 in value on a vehicle. That's for each person. So if a married couple filed bankruptcy, there'd be an exemption for each party, assuming the car titles are in each spouse's name. There's a similar $7,000 exemption for household goods and clothing. That usually covers the value of most people's household goods and clothing, primarily because the value of the household goods, furniture, and appliances is garage sale value. It's not original cost or replacement value. And although garage sale value is always a bit of an estimate, it's certainly much lower value than replacement cost, and usually that covers most people's furniture and appliances and household goods. Additionally, any pension account is 100% protected if it is a ERISA qualified, that is IRS qualified pension. This includes all 401ks, IRAs, 403bs, IPERs, union pension accounts, 100% protected and exempt. There are, however, some restrictions with regard to how much you can contribute to an IRA in the 2 years prior to filing bankruptcy, so that has to be, you have to take a look at that before you file as well. Now's a good time probably to remind you not to do any selling of property, transferring of property into other parties' names, giving away gift property, family members, or anybody else prior to seeing an attorney. If you're going to file bankruptcy, there is some pre-bankruptcy planning allowed. There is some selling of assets or transferring assets or moving one asset from one place to another that is allowed prior to bankruptcy that could protect those assets, and that's good pre-bankruptcy planning. But it takes an experienced attorney to tell you how to do that correctly. And if you transfer assets or sell them prior to filing, you may be making a big mistake if you don't do it on the advice of your attorney. So don't do any transferring or selling of assets until you've spoken to an attorney that can advise you how to file bankruptcy correctly and prepare for bankruptcy correctly. A few other exemptions allowed under Iowa law. An important one is a $10,000 exemption for tools of trade. That would be any kind of tools used in your work, mechanics tools, carpenter's tools, things like that, and that also applies to farming implements and livestock. A $10,000 exemption, and that is valued also at the actual value of your current tools or garage type or auction sale value. So additionally, any workers' compensation claim you might have is fully protected and exempt. That's true if you have the claim now. If you've settled the claim and have settlement funds in a bank account, that is not exempt. So in a workers' compensation situation, it's okay to file the bankruptcy while you have that claim, because if you receive a settlement in the future after the bankruptcy is filed, it's going to be all yours. That's not true in a personal injury situation. It's a little more complicated. A personal injury claim you have may or may not be exempt, and you need to speak with your attorney to determine what exposure you might have there prior to filing. There's a $1,000 exemption allowed for any money in a bank account per person, $2,000 for a joint couple that files. So if your bank account, if you have savings in excess of $1,000 apiece, you're going to have to do something with that money before you file, and speak to your attorney about doing that. There are other exemptions for property, for other kinds of property. Your attorney will be able to advise you with regard to that. But the last thing I want to leave you with is don't be transferring property or selling property before filing bankruptcy. You may be able to do that prior to filing to protect additional property, but don't do it without an attorney's advice.